Hi, I'm Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber, and I'm here with Ondrej Krehel, who is the founder of LIFARS, a cybersecurity company and forensic company here in New York City. Well, welcome.
That is correct.
This was probably easy for you to come over and visit.
It was super hard. I took a subway, takes full 25 minutes to get here.
Well, you got here, and I appreciate you coming by. So, listen, we're going to talk about the company. I'm going to ask you about kind of cyber and predictions and hacking and all kinds of things. But tell us about you. Tell us a little bit about how'd you get interested in the business and maybe some of your background.
I was 19 years old in a former Czechoslovakia. I was picked by, very similar to your intelligence agency, to perform cyber analyst operations in energy sector. So the agency oversaw 2 nuclear power plants and maybe 30 water power plants. And Europe at the time had a specific project to secure electric grid from any type of the attacks, especially intrusions into nuclear waste disposal from facilities.
You were picked probably because you got 100 on a test or something. You must have scored very high in some area.
I think I had a good haircut. But I was a mathematical physics major, theoretical physics major, and I always loved crypto. And I was a part of the Linux forum and was doing very well on the Linux forum. I loved Linux at the time. I completely hated all other operating systems. You don't need to be specific. But I was a person who wrote his own mouse config, could not even trust a text file provided.
So big Linux guy, picked by the government to do some interesting work. There must have been some, at some point you must have figured out that hacking and kind of malicious activity would be of interest to you.
So the work was really looking at the various systems at that time. You would call them probably SOC these days, right? Like the Cyber Command Operations Center, and look at various type of attacks, threat actors trying to penetrate the perimeter and enter the premises of the facilities.
And you probably figured out quickly that it's easy to penetrate a perimeter to enter the facility, right?
Well, it depends who you are and level of effort and dedication. If you've got something who is very dedicated, has the resources, and has a talent, a little bit of a budget, not necessarily just, the budget's not the only concern, then it's very hard to resist.
Is it possible to put a resource somewhere on the internet and build a defense that would stop the really, really, truly determined, capable actor from getting in? Is that possible?
If you cannot intervene with that threat actor, right? If you cannot disrupt him in any way, then there is no reason for him to stop it.
That's depressing.
Oh, it's not. I mean, can we stop North Korea from do what they do?
I guess you're right. So you need a little bit of luck and a little bit of active engagement.
I would say we live in an ecosystem where you need to have partners in your life and in society. And if you have a good partners, you can cut them off from reaching to you. And maybe that's enough.
Interesting. So tell us about your company, LIFARS. First of all, what does that stand for?
So being math major, I had to come with some scientific, right? Okay. So New York has a Statue of Liberty. So L stands for liberty. What we do is incident response or incident forensics.
Okay.
So that's I and
LIF.
F. And what we perform at the end for the client is the remediation or resolution service, right? So we come at your liberty, we perform incident forensics, and we try to remediate, resolve your situation.
Now I'll remember that forever. That actually makes perfect sense. That's a good name. Tell us about what you do. Tell us about the company.
What we do is incident response. So most of the cases are close to like a cyber emergency situations. Like the cyber patient believes that most likely he's gonna die. It's the worst cancer ever they had. And they need to literally few cyber oxygen, cyber hugs, tell them everything's gonna be okay.
It's a nice cheery analogy.
Exactly, yeah. And then we'll try to help them, we'll try to get them out of it, right? So our goal is to get them out of the emergency room, cyber emergency room, to normal general hospital and a rehab. And most of them suffer various type of attacks or incidents and events. Many of them are insiders, right? The legal system in the US allows
some sabotage going on.
Yeah, sabotage and stealing intellectual property, extorting company for the data, right? That varies.
What do you do when they call about ransomware?
We did close to 40 to 50 high-profile cases, including Samsung. I feel very privileged with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and we were very close to submitting some of the critical pieces of evidence on some of these cases on ransomware. And the ransomware is just going to grow. It's a market that has been explored for very quick win by threat actors since they get paid in 3 days.
It's so easy too, right?
And it affects everyone. You can go individuals. Like tomorrow, if I told everyone, if you don't have $500 on the bank account, most likely you need to find a different job. If you have a $500, you are a target for any ransomware.
But what do you tell them when the patient calls you and they're dying of ransomware? What do you do?
I'll ask them, do you think you can recover the data? Do you need to pay, yes or no?
Let's say they say, I have no idea if I should pay. I think I need my, like they're sort of just, I'll bet you get some who are sort of confused. Just can't give a real clear answer about anything. They just don't know what to do.
So then we try to analyze, can they really recover the data? Would they need to pay the threat actor?
Let's say you can't recover it.
Well, that's a tough one. Then you have only two options.
Didn't Merck had that problem, right?
They did. So then you have, either you rebuild it, you decide I'm not paying and I'm going to spend money to rebuild it, or I'll pay it and I'll get my data back.
Yeah. You know something? It's so funny to hear you say that. I wrote a blog a year ago where I said something like that. I said, look, first off, the best thing to do is have an architecture and a scheme where you don't get ransomware, duh, right? I mean, there should be backing up, you should be robust, distribute, all the things you and I would say.
I would love to disagree with you. It's almost like getting a cold. Can you prevent or get a cold?
I guess you can't totally, but you can try not to go out in the rain with no shirt on. I mean, you can do some
there are
basics.
things you can,
So I said that, but I said, then I was sort of agreeing with you that I said, look, maybe you just pay. You know, is that so terrible? I mean, if you're going to get your stuff back, maybe. And I got a lot of blowback. I saw a lot of collisions in social media, people saying, Ed, what are you, nuts? You never pay. And a minute ago you suggested perhaps you do pay.
Most of the companies do pay, I can tell you.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
You know, most people don't say what you just said. That's interesting.
I would say 80% of the victims that we had to pay.
Wow. What's the biggest fine you ever saw anybody pay?
$500,000.
Wow, that's a ton of money.
No.
It seems like it's a ton of money to
No,
pay.
imagine. So right now, ransomware in these waters here in New York, the group is heavily focusing on union type of a business.
Yeah.
And under a union, if you don't run a payroll, your penalty might be, let's say, from $1.5 to $2.5 million. We had a construction company that if they did not run the payroll, would be close to $2 million penalty. So now if someone is asking you to pay a quarter of that,
You pay.
perhaps.
Wow. Have you seen cases where the fines are so low that it's almost a no-brainer to just pay it, like $1,000 or something?
Definitely. Remember that email that was going around and told you that you're on a camera? Maybe you got that ad too.
It rings a bell.
Yeah. If you're important, you get it. So anyone important got it.
Not important, but might have gotten it anyway. So.
And in that email, they said, we have your password, we know who you are, we recorded you on camera, and you're doing all these things that no one really wants to know.
Yeah.
So that email was circulating around. In the first week, it's like a Nigerian princess scam, made $300,000. And the payments were very low. And most of these individuals really did
$100, that kind of thing?
I would say from few hundred to maybe thousand, or 4,000 or 5,000, depends who you are. And they really did profile well of those individuals.
Wow.
It wasn't that they just went blind shooting in here. They did profile some individuals.
Someone who would be embarrassed.
Exactly, yeah, someone who had something.
But could pay.
And could pay. And we had a few victims coming in here and said, if this is the only thing I've done, and they have, I don't worry about that, but I've done some other stuff. Can you look at if they got that stuff?
So you must have some pretty interesting stories that you can't tell us, I'm going to guess.
We try to sanitize. I would say we try to find a way to publish some of our stories. And we're thinking, so we have a newsletter. In the newsletter, we do provide some of like a case studies from our victims. Some of our victims and openly endorsing actually like on a ransomware, that what we've done for them and how did it go. And they're willing to talk to people about it.
Interesting. Now, do you do some advisory and consulting type work in addition, like for clients that might want to use your expertise to get ahead of these things, maybe to try and prevent?
We
you
do
some of that
run
work?
various like a proactive type of services, but it's more, I would say, structure according to some of the frameworks, industry frameworks.
Interesting. Now let's talk just in general about hacking. Do you think, are things getting better or worse, like in terms of defense? Do you think we're becoming more vulnerable and that the consequences becoming more grave? Or do you see maybe some progress and things getting a little more secure? Where are you on that spectrum?
I think we live in an era where life is a breach. You were born, the universe will consume your molecules at the end, and in between your identity and what you have will be extorted, abused, and stolen.
This is such a negative existential view of life here. Right?
No, it's not. It's almost like telling that you're not gonna have a cold, right? You're gonna have a cold.
Life is a breach is a good. Do you make T-shirts that say that? That'd be a good LIFARS T-shirts. Like life is a breach with your logo on the back. That's probably a good one, right?
It might be. Yeah.
Give that away at RSA. But so you're thinking things are probably getting a little bit more grave.
I think it's become one of the life certainties, right? That someone's gonna steal your data and.
Yeah. I think that's true.
And I think you have to count with this. It's almost like, well, I have to count I'm going to get cold or probably might have a flu in a life, right? Like you said it, like I have to protect myself somehow, right? So I try to mitigate as much as possible and delay that momentum, but it's coming. It's just at some point, the weakness will be exploited and it's unfortunate. And then what you do, how well you prepare and who are your partners to help you? How quickly can you recover from it? And I think that's where we are at the moment. Like we all believe that the recovery is the critical component. Response and recovery is a critical component of the cyber ecosystem. And maybe that's what we didn't see before. We talk about how we play offense, how we play defense, how we deploy all these tools. And then we didn't really exercise. Like in the military is very good in exercising the tactical missions, right? Like let's say direct actions.
Yeah, that's what they do.
That's what they do. And I think that's becoming part of our civilian life.
You see government is playing a role here? Is like here in the U.S., there's DHS and
well,
others.
definitely. John Felker was here last week. Phenomenal. I think he increased capabilities of the DHS team. So kudos to John Felker and his team. Feel very privileged. We work with them, with his team on some of the cases.
Cybersecurity.
Yeah, on some of the nation state, critical infrastructure pieces. Definitely government, the military. I would say U.S. is a leading force.
The problem is, what can they do about some of the problems that you talked about? Like, for example, ransomware or credential theft. What can DHS possibly do?
So here's the thing. How much do you want IRS in your banking statements?
Well, I just want them to review it. I don't want them to be in it.
Same for the cyber, right? Yeah. So let's be very clear what we're asking them to do. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the nation is asking them to protect the nation-critical systems.
Correct.
From the cyber attacks.
And that's reasonable.
And it's reasonable. Now, should they be handling the cyber 911 phone call from old lady somewhere that's thinking that her iPhone is one icon drop and disappear?
No.
So we have to be very clear what the mission we give them, and they have a mission on their website.
But you picked two ends of the spectrum that are so easy. Somewhere in the middle, it gets a little more confused.
It is. But
like if that old lady is calling and she happens to work in a nuclear power plant and she noticed something weird, then I want her to listen. Then I want DHS to listen.
That's a different story.
Somewhere there's a blurry.
Definitely. But I think the government. I work through many government systems in my past, right? When I was at Strauss Friedberg, we worked very closely with various other governments on either in Zurich, in London, and so a lot of different governments and a lot of different law enforcement agencies. And I think in the US, I truly believe it's something to admire how the law enforcement agencies, with the pressure they have, right, with the amount of resources they have, what type of work they do. Yeah. How many professionals do you think Secret Service has? Maybe 3,000 total. Mm-hmm. In a cyber division here in New York, I'm not going to name, but it's under 10 people that are actually doing this. And they do all the major financial crimes, right? They're related to somehow the critical infrastructure of the state of New York. So I think it's impressive how condensed resources they have and what they're achieving.
Interesting. Tell me about your QuBit conference.
So I always want to give something back to a community, and everyone is involved in various venues in their life. And I realized that probably the biggest contribution from me coming to the US and being very privileged to be here and establish my mission in here would be give something back to other people, maybe younger generation, and maybe involve the students in Central Europe, where when I was leaving, I kind of didn't see the hope, or we had a dictator at the power, and I have very different opinion, right? Imagine you live in Iran, right, these days, and you're a young professional, and how you feel. And then you come into the country where you cannot be basically trusted because you're coming from a bloc that's heavy influenced by the East, right? So I always wanted to give something back and create this bridge. So when I was coming back and forth between the US and Europe, many of my friends, professionals in cybersecurity and forensics, asked me, what is really happening in America? Where are they? Like, what is average CISO in America actually doing? What is his role? What is the role of incident response? What is the role of forensic investigations? How far are you? What do you know? What you don't know? What is the level of skill set from graduates in the US versus graduates in Europe? And I felt that I have a very unique opportunity being here in New York, create a bridge between East and West, and also come to East and tell them that these are your friends, these are your allies. That in the US, maybe outside of political agenda of what you see on the TV, these are normal people, they're approachable people. The friendship that I experienced in here in the US, the camaraderie, the sharing of information and pointing to the right directions instead of pointing in the wrong direction. I felt that's very important, and very important to create this partnership. And I feel very privileged that the Federal Bureau of Investigation is opening the conference every year. We have people from Europol, NATO, 2 national certs, some of the classified individuals at the event, and they all do various presentations. That what is their missions, why they are where they are, and how they can help to that region. And also feel very well that now it's going to be 6th year of the QuBit. It became its own separate entity, which is ran by 7 individuals. So actually we create 7 work placements from out of nothing, and from Slovakia.
It's wonderful, and you know the idea of giving back is that's a wonderful thing. I mean, so impressive. I'm glad you're doing that. And it's also nice that you have that law enforcement connection, particularly for young people. I think we're at a time now when, it seems like every day you read about criticisms of that community, but you and I both know what fine work they do and what important work, right?
That is correct.
We'd all be in a lot of trouble if they didn't do what they did, right?
And they love the agents from FBI, right? Almost everyone stops him for a whole day and they talk to him. So it's great that they're in Prague, and it's a good region for them to be in.
That's great. You enjoying running your company? You having fun every day?
So no one really told me what that actually be to run the company, right? And I was part of Strauss Friedberg, and I really learned a lot from Ed.
Edward Strauss, an awesome guy.
Exactly, Ed and
Tell
Eric.
us the best part and the worst part of running a company. What's the best, what's the worst?
The worst part is that you truly work for all those people. You're actually not running it, right? When you think when someone is thinking that you are at the top of a pyramid, truly what you do, you're a servant to everyone else in the company, right? And my description of the company says, in the morning I clear the garbage. Like, during the day I provide any support the company needs. In the afternoon I'm trying to clear every mess and every possible conflict that company's employees did create it with the clients, partners, right? And then at the night I'm really thinking, what are we doing? What is our mission? What is our vision? Where should we be going? And at the night I actually do the work. So it's really easy. When you run a company, you have to divide your life into 3 shifts.
Well, that sounds like the 3rd shift is the best, right?
Definitely, the shortest though.
Yeah, the cleaning up the problem is probably not as much fun.
No, but it's part of a challenging component of running the business.
Well, I hope you keep doing it. You run a fine group. I've met your team, and I think they're awesome.
Thank you.
And glad we're neighbors here in New York, and I appreciate you coming and spending some time and sharing.
Ed, thank you for having me.
Keep up the great work. Great. And we will see you next time.